then I'm going to hit it, and we'll have Maria and Dex on here in just a second. Well, we are so excited to have you with us today for another church revitalization resource. Before we jump in, I just want to let you know we're going to take some time to answer questions in the second half of our Zoom meeting today. So please feel free to ask your questions in the Zoom comments, and our revitalization team will be glad to help manage as much of that as they can. We're glad to have them on board. But this morning, I am so excited to introduce to you today Maria Price and Dex Alexander. Wave to us all so they can see you, from Legacy. They are a branding and marketing company in Riverside, California, which also happens to be the marketing arm of our own California Southern Baptist Convention. Over the past 18 months, your convention, we have had an amazing overhaul of our branding and marketing that has launched us deep into the 21st century. And if you go to csbc.com, you will notice it immediately. And having worked with Legacy, I can tell you, these guys are amazing. They're some of my favorite people, but I can tell you a couple of things beyond that. They're skilled in their craft, and they have a heart for the church and for the kingdom of Christ. Maria and Dex, welcome to the Revitalization Resource.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's good to be with you this morning.
Well, thank you. So we titled this, as we were talking, Marketing or Ministry. And so I want to start out with just a 30,000-foot question, and that is this: does marketing or ministry have to be does marketing or ministry have to be either or? And by the way, it's their marketing company is Legible, not Legacy. Let me correct that very quickly. The name of their company is Legible, and so help us understand: does marketing or ministry have to be an either or?
Ralph, that's a great question. And again, thank you very much. For anybody who wants to start looking now, the website is legible.org. And the question that you asked, is it either or? I think there are some people that think doing one is pulling resources, time, energy from the other. And actually, ministry and marketing work hand in hand. It's one of the great things, Ralph, that I appreciate about working with you specifically, and the energy that you're putting towards communicating the resources that are available, the opportunities that are available through revitalization and the convention. But even more than that, if you think back, one of the ways that helps me to understand it, in the fourth chapter of Acts, the apostles are before a group that are telling them to stop talking about Jesus, and Acts 4:20 records them saying, "We cannot keep silent about what we have seen and heard." That is a marketing statement, and essentially captures the crux of what marketing means. Now, that word for many elicits a bit of, it's kind of sleazy. I get, marketing to my house, or people have marketed to me, or they think that it's spin or twist. And it's really not that. Marketing is being absolutely honest about both who you are, your uniqueness in Christ as it relates to you, either as an individual, as a minister, or as an organization, and communicating the ministry opportunities that you have. So ministry without marketing, ministry without informing people that ministry is possible, or that there are things available to them, is actually doing a bit of a disservice to the community that you are called to serve. It falls in line with, how will they hear without a preacher? Well, how will they hear about your ministry without you being able to communicate and inform and inspire to come and be a part of it? So it is not a binary decision. It is not an either or. your marketing efforts, your communication efforts are an extension of the work that you are doing. It's an informing of the work that you're doing and an invitation to come and be a part of what your organization has to offer.
Let me ask you guys another question, and that is, this has been a whirlwind year with COVID for all of us in pastoral ministry. What are we getting right, and what are we missing as the church?
Oh, that's a big question. I'll limit it to marketing.
Yes, I'm sure we could go after that all day.
That question wasn't loaded at all.
Yeah, I'll limit it to marketing, and Maria has some opinions on this as well. I would say, in a general sense, there's honestly a lot of people have been thrust into marketing during the time of COVID. We like to think of, and many people have said this, that COVID has been a bit of an accelerator for people who before last year were not really engaged with technology as a way of providing an alternative for people to still watch services or keep a community together. COVID fast-tracked people into having to adopt technology in order to keep their communities together. I think the same thing is true about marketing, but I think one of the things that churches miss is they think that the only way to communicate, or the only way that they should communicate, is during their service time, during their on-platform time. There's things like announcements and that sort of stuff, that if people aren't watching the stream, then they're not having an opportunity to be communicated to. And that is one of the places that I think churches can expand their understanding, that there are plenty of tools, many of other ways to be able to communicate with people, to let them know what is happening in the church. I think another big place is, churches tend to think that technology is a distraction oftentimes from ministry, or that being too involved, whether it's social media or websites or any of that sort of stuff, that it's a distraction from ministry. And I think because that thought is still prevalent in many churches are really missing an opportunity. I firmly think that if Paul were alive today, he would be leveraging tools like social media and Facebook to get the message across that he had. He used letters because that was the fastest and farthest reaching technology available to him at the time, thanks to the infrastructure of Rome, where roads had sort of connected all of these places. But if there were a faster or a further reaching way for him to be able to do that, to make contact, maintain contact, to let people know he was coming, to thank people who were generous to him when he had went, I think he would have used those tools. And so trying to help churches understand different tools, not all of them, you don't need all of them, they don't all need to be a part, but understand which tools could be most effective in strategy is one of the things that we love to do, and one of the ways that I think churches could advance a bit more during this time.
Maria, do you have anything to add to this?
Thanks, Ralph. Dex always says it so well. That was so good. I'm a Southern Baptist pastor's daughter. Dex is TK as well.
And in fact, all three of us are. Southern Baptist pastors' kids.
Yeah. TKs, SBC TKs, yes. And I have so many great conversations with pastors and church leaders of how we can help. And a lot of the time I hear this sentiment, I don't have time for marketing. I don't know anything about that. I'm just a pastor. I just want to be faithful to the word of God and the gospel and win souls, right? All really good things. And I just want to kind of reiterate again that marketing is an extension of that.
Yes.
That is a place where people exist. They exist online, they exist in your communities. And so finding where they are and connecting with them and getting them connected with your church is so important. And that's why I think marketing is actually really important to the gospel. And so I would say one of the things the church can do best, can work on, is clarifying your message and your brand, if you will. That's the story you're telling as a church. Apart from the gospel message, just here's our church, here's our values, here's how we exist in the community. Clarifying that so that when you do market, it's clear. When you have a website that's easy to navigate and works when you draw people towards it, go on your social media account, it has a clear message, they can find what they need, they kind of know who you are. And so it's just an extension of when they visit your church, it's kind of a journey. They've shaken your hand on your website, they've seen something on email or social media, and then they go to the church and it's like, oh, this is the place that I saw on. So it's all kind of cohesive as a brand. And I think clarifying that is one of the things churches can do really well, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think the thing I'm hearing from both of you is that there has been a major shift during COVID to social media, where before we were in social media, but during COVID, when we had nothing to do, people would spend hours on online. And so the church can take advantage of an opportunity to reach people like we've never reached before. I heard something yesterday from Rick Warren that I thought was so interesting historically, that the Reformation would never have happened had the Gutenberg press not been invented.
Mm-hmm.
That the Reformation was launched because of the Gutenberg press.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, what social media has done, it has become the new Gutenberg press, so to speak, for the church to be able to communicate. Would that be correct?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Actually, I used to be a history teacher, Ralph, in my former life, and I would talk about how the leaders of the church were the only ones who could interpret scripture and share scripture, and the Gutenberg press made the Bible accessible to the common people, and so people were reading the Bible in their own language because it was mass produced. What an amazing gift that technology was to the progression of the church and the gospel. So yes, I agree.
So I know for some of us, it might be a little bit like looking at a monster, but really it is a friend, social media, that could really help us move the gospel forward. So let me just ask you, because this has been a whirlwind year, tell us a little bit about the gospel and social media. How can we as churches utilize social media?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we talk about social media as a tool, and it really depends on the strategy of the church to help figure out which tools are going to work best. Meaning, if my strategy is to weld together the frame on my motorcycle, then having drywall tape is probably not the right tool, right? Because that's not what I'm trying to execute.
Right.
So what we don't want is for every church or every church leader to think, okay, I've got to I've got to be incredible on TikTok, and I've got to have Instagram, and I've got to be on Facebook, and I've got to be on this, and I've got to be on that. I have to have all of these tools in order to be able to just simply do ministry nowadays, because that's not true. But it really is a mental framework of thinking that social media for years was a bit more about escapism, and now it's a bit more about informing, engaging, and inviting. And there are plenty of ways to be able to do that, and plenty of ways to use social media to do that. The best thing about social media is that for the cost, the exposure is exponential. To be able to reach the same number of people with a mailer is going to cost you a lot of money just to get to the addresses, and the return on mailers is less than 1% as it relates to engaging people and moving them. For the cost, a billboard, you might get the same number of people passing by this billboard, but you don't get the engagement, the views. It doesn't show up in their hand, in their pocket, on their phone. That is the beautiful thing about social media and about technology as it relates to social media, phones, websites, that sort of stuff. But the strategy has to be there in order to think, okay, we're trying to do this very specific thing with Instagram, which is really more about what does it look like and feel like when I'm there, versus Facebook, which has a lot more tools to be able to fully engage people. You can show your services there, people can comment, you can go live, you can do all of these things there, versus Twitter, which is more about quick hit text, right? I've got 140 characters to say a thing, but the thing about Twitter that's great about Twitter versus Instagram is Twitter is always in these engaging conversations. Oftentimes, all of Twitter is talking about the same thing. You can jump in and engage that conversation with a biblical worldview, as opposed to, so each one of them kind of has a different thing that it does well. And to figure out your church's strategy with using these tools now gives you, you can think about them more as a conduit as opposed to a distraction, or as opposed to something that you just have to do because that's where people are nowadays.
Yeah, can I add to that, Ralph?
Yes, please.
I saw a question in the chat about which streaming platforms and social media platforms you should use. It depends on your strategy, but YouTube is actually the second largest search engine in the world, next to Google. And YouTube is a really great place to put content and stream your services. We also make a case for Facebook quite a bit at Legible because Facebook has such a powerful engagement process. If you go and watch a live streaming service on Facebook, it tells most everyone in your reach, hey, Ralph's neighbor is watching, Humanity Church live service. So then they see that you're taking part in that, and you can share posts, you can engage with other people. And so I think YouTube and Facebook are really great tools for that. I think it depends on your audience and your demographic, the further social media tools that you do from there. Statistics show that on Facebook, the boomer generation is the highest percentage of users on Facebook. So Gen Zers are not engaging on Facebook. Gen Xers and millennials love Instagram. So if you're wanting to reach certain demographics, take a strategy and think about who's on those platforms and engaging with those platforms. And then I would use those platforms differently. And I always say this to our clients, keep social media social. Social media isn't a place only for information. Social media should be a place for engaging your community, both in conversations, creating content that encourages their life, that they can share with others, having interactions, all keeping it social for engagement. And I think a lot of churches just put out their one graphic. This is information you need on every platform. And instead of using the tool for how it's created to be used, and that keeps social media social.
Got it. So I'd love for you to give us a story. Tell us a story of a church that perhaps you have been working with that you have been able to help and what has happened. Tell us a story.
Well, I'll let Maria do the details because she honestly did the bulk of the work for it. She's has a fascinating mind for how these sort of platforms are useful as tools. But we just engaged with a church that was adding actually they were adding 2 campuses before Easter. And I think we met with them 3 months, maybe 4 months before. And the way that Maria really helped them to think through their social media strategy is a couple of things. One, to be able to create consistency. There should be a certain level of expectation where people go, okay, I know when I'm going to get certain information from these folks. Doesn't mean you can't be surprising, and it doesn't mean you can't be spontaneous, but internally it helps to have some consistency. 2, to help them take what were their core values, vision, mission, and turn those into conversational statements. We like to say that social media is like being at a party, And the rules are very similar to being at a party in the sense that if you walk into a party and everyone is talking about a specific thing, you wouldn't just blurt out, hey, this weekend I talked about Matthew chapter 9, while everybody else in the conversation at a party, it'd be like, okay, congratulations. Like, we're going to go back to where it is. But oftentimes many churches use it that way. So figure out, go in and get a sense of at the party, the people in social media, folks that are following you and people that you follow. What is sort of the zeitgeist? What's the collective spirit and energy? And then figure out how you can help to infuse your things in there. And anyway, there's a couple of other things. And over the course of these 3 months, a church that had zero name, no one knew that they were coming, no one had met the pastor, no one had done any of these things. Between the time that we started working and engaging this community, targeting this community in social media, on that Easter morning, I think they had 168, it's either 168 or 186 people that were there. That story is the thing that I love about that story is that it fully engaged the minds, the spirits, the creativity of the people, so that as it went from the very first post, which no one knew about, until the very last post, which I think on Facebook, Maria, you would definitely know these numbers better, but I think it was in the thousands. I think it was 12,000 or so engagements by the end of it. People had a good sense of who this church was that's coming into this community. To me, that is the story of social media and engagement and why it works out well. Maria, will you flesh out the gaps in that for me there?
Oh, awesome. I think you did a great job. Yeah, we had about 12,000 engagements, and we used Facebook is actually really easy to learn with ads, and you can find the people that you want to reach, and you can make sure you can pay just a small amount of money to reach them and make sure the stuff you're sending is in their feed. So we had 12,000 engagements, which is meaning someone clicked, someone shared, someone commented. And then we had the reach was about 5 times that. So about 5 times the amount of people had that in their feed. And so one of the things that I think worked most importantly, though, was not the ad buy, not the technical logistics of that, but it was the message. We were sharing the story of what that church was about, their values. This church was called Verve Community Church, and their values are for your hope, for the gospel, and for changed lives. And we started saying that and taking a bunch of pictures of the community that they were in, and telling a story about their church. So when you clicked on an ad or you saw something, it was a direct message about hope, about the gospel, and then click to connect with someone, click to pray. There was a couple of those. And so then when they got to the accounts, there was things about the church that I think we had shared consistently there that really helped drive that whole process to get engagements and people to visit the church. So we had a ton of people say, oh yeah, I saw that ad, or I saw what you're doing there. And so we put together a whole strategy, and we had this really great tool that we put together to use all the platforms that you should be using as a church and plan out the year of communication. And so we helped them build that into their system as well. And then we would point out places that we want to highlight, like Easter and Good Friday are it's like the Super Bowl of church life. So we want people to come, and we want to get that information out to the biggest crowd we can, so we can share the gospel. And so we help them kind of guide their calendar, if that makes sense. But telling the story of their values, instead of just, we have Easter, come at this time, we shared more of a story, something that would pique interest in the people who are clicking.
Maria and Dex, give us, we've got a range of pastors, some that are doing an excellent job and they're marketing and streaming and everything, but we've got probably a number of leaders here, and perhaps they're just beginning. They're just starting. And, they got on Facebook during COVID, and Now they're just kind of coming out of the cloud. What give a church leader 2 or 3 simple steps to move forward in this?
Me? Oh. So one thing I always tell churches, just get in the game. There's people in your church that may know how to work some of these platforms, and just start doing that. But secondly, I would clarify our message. Who are we as a church? And how can we communicate that well? And then decide who are the people we're trying to reach? Where are they? Are they this age demographic? Are they 30s and 40s families that they're kind of lacking? That kind of demographic is lacking in your church. We really want to reach the families in our community. Okay, where are they spending their time? What platforms do they engage with? And then create things that would be helpful to their life, like content, meaning say something about parenting or relationships or something like that. Talk about things they're talking about and enter the conversation. So I would say, just get in the game, start trying, clarify your message as a church, and think about who you want to reach, and that would give you the next steps to, should we be on these platforms? Should we be spending most of our time? And I just saw a question in the chat: should we use YouTube or Facebook or both? There's value in both of those. YouTube has a great setup to where you're producing content that can be evergreen and last longer, because you can put them in series and kind of keep a library of what you're doing. So if someone wanted to go look, it's content that they can find. Like this resource right now will be on our YouTube page and on our website, and people can find and access it later on. They don't have to be at the event. Facebook is great for community engagement, event promotion, things like that. So I think there's value in both of those to answer this specific question.
Well, this has really been helpful. I think there are a lot of things that are going. One of the questions I saw was the use of chat during Facebook or online, how you might be able to use that to engage people during a Sunday morning service gathering or whatever. How can people engage their people when they are online?
Yeah, it's different for each platform, but Facebook has this, and if you have not looked into this yet and you're doing online services and desire to continue to do online services, the Church Online platform is a free online platform that's got a lot of really, really cool, good and unique tools. It was started through Life Church, Craig Groeschel's church. They created a tool. It's a video window. It's a chat window. People can put in their nicknames. They've got side rooms for prayers and all that sort of stuff. It's a pretty cool tool. But a couple of the basics. One, having an online host or someone in the chat room on Facebook that is representative of the organization to help people know where the twists and turns are, to reinforce some of the things that the pastor is saying, to help guide people. If someone is mentioning, in chat that they had a tough week, or they're facing a certain problem, or this, that, and the other, to be able to be an extension of the church in the chat is a big deal, and to be able to moderate if there happens to be, knuckleheads or something that are causing problems. So that is a big thing. The second thing is that person, that chat representative or host, should have information similar to what Wendy is doing. I mentioned the Church Online platform, and Wendy jumped right in and typed in.
Yep, I just saw that. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, that is a great posture, a great position for someone on behalf of the organization to do when the pastor is talking about giving online, or they give a phone number, or we're doing this particular thing, to have someone that just sort of bounces them right into there is a good thing. And then lastly, to try to help communicate whatever the next step is. At the end of the service, we want you to, if you need prayer, you can go here or email us with this, to be able to in the chat point people to whatever that next step is is a good thing as well. Additionally, things like, when the worship team is up, to be able to encourage people, hey, here's where you can get this song or download it. They essentially help to bridge the gap between the people who are still at home or wherever they are watching, and the person who is on the platform. And for Chris, I'm just noticing he says this, just specific to this question, we're doing all these things, but we're just getting crickets. Any suggestions? Some of that, Chris, I think crickets, especially if this over the past year or something like that, is the first time that you're doing it, or if it's happened in the first couple of months, crickets are to be expected. It's a change of pace. It is a change of scenery. It is a change of venue. And so don't be frustrated with crickets. Maintain consistency in spite of the crickets. The other thing that I would say, though, is especially as the culture of online is being built for your particular community, make specific asks of the things that you are asking people to do. Because for most of us, being online, it really is more about just watching without necessarily engaging. If you think about, any of us who are scrolling through Facebook or scrolling through, Instagram or any of these things, most times we're just swiping the screen. We're not really laughing out loud, even if we think LOL. We're not really, whatever. There may be one or two things that we're engaging with. So Chris, I would encourage you to invite people to do the things that you are hoping that they would do. Make the direct ask. Please let us know if you have prayer. Tell us a thing that happened this week that you would like prayer for. When was the last time you sang this worship song? What line sticks out to you? Like asking specific questions invites and reminds people that we're still desiring community, we're still desiring engagement, even though this platform is different than sitting next to your neighbor in the room.
So because this has been brought up a couple of times, can you talk to us about developing a social media team and marketing team in your church? Let's say you don't have the resources to hire somebody and making that happen. Give us some principles, direction, rules, thoughts on how to create a team to actually help you make this happen in a local church.
There was a really interesting question on chat that I want to address, and then I'll jump into that one.
Go for it.
The question was, been doing this pre-COVID, so we are being patient, but we must not be asking the right questions. We are continuing to do that via the host. Do I, as a pastor, need to direct that to that audience? So I think that's a really interesting question. And one of the things you want to consider is programming your online content to the online audience. Instead of it just being a spectator experience for people who are not in the room, you want to talk directly to them. There are ways that you can do this by having an online host greet on video only those online while people are waiting to go on service. Like greet the online, say, and even as I'm a worship leader, every Sunday I welcome everybody in the room, and I say, if you're joining us online, we're so glad you're here as well, including people online. I think that if a pastor says, hey, here's how to respond to the message today, here's what I'm asking people. If you're online, here's what you can do. And then directly after the message, speak to the online audience again. Have someone come in, and so you're not just looking at the worship team or whatever that's happening in the room. Talk directly to that audience. Say, hey, we're so glad you joined us on today. Here's what we're asking you next. I think that's really important to address the people online. Obviously, we want, and this is different philosophies. There's a lot of churches doing a lot of different things. Some big mega churches are calling their online experience another campus. But I think most in general, the churches are wanting people to be at the gathering. And so you want to invite them. Thank you for joining us online. We're so glad you're here. Here's what you can do next. And we'd love to get your information so we can follow up next week. And then you follow up with them and invite them to the gathering, ask them if you can pray for them. I think directly communicating to your online audience is really important. Dex, would you add anything to that? Oops. Oh, you're muted.
No, yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I mean, there's probably a million different reasons why the response may not be that, and so not knowing exactly what your culture is like, we're kind of shooting in broad generalities here, Pastor Clark. But the point that Maria made about the pastor or anyone from the platform engaging the online audience, that is a very important thing to help to bridge the gap or close the distance between people who are at home and people who are in the room. People who happen to be in the room, especially as now churches are opening up more and programming is getting a bit more back to how it was before. There's a lot of things that in the room you get, great volume and sound. You may have had a donut and a coffee out in the front. You got to reconnect with a friend before you find your favorite seat. All of these things are things that engender a bit more looseness and engagement. Whereas online, it's, you're on a couch, it may not sound great depending on what their TV set is like, all of those things. So it is important to be able to target and welcome and focus on the people in the online community if that is an ongoing part of your strategy, which I think it should be.
I want to jump to this question that's on the on our chat. How do we engage new followers without being creepy? I think that's a great question.
Yeah. There is again. I think being at a party strategy is a good way of sort of understanding creepy versus non-creepy. Meaning, if you're at a party, there's only so much information that you're hoping to get from someone before they start to go, I don't want to tell you my phone number, we just met. I don't want to give you my, we just met. So being able to use a very similar strategy that you would use in a party with a room. I think one, in a general sense, acknowledging and addressing that they are there is a big, huge deal. Two, not making excuses for the fact that they are where you are and you are where you are, meaning not saying, hey, we know you're watching online and we really all wish that we were together again, but we've got to sort of put up with the online until we do whatever. Or, just acknowledging that they are where they are is a big, huge deal. For some people, that is the step that they want to take from an engagement standpoint. They're not ready to come to even if you were fully open or whatever, they're not coming this week or not. So encouraging them that, man, you are here and you're a part of us wherever you are is a big thing. And then having a general place for people to be able to give you information and you having a very clear way of describing what the payoff is going to be. Meaning, we're glad that you're here. If you shoot us an email at this, give us a little information about us and we'll give us a little information about you. We'll give you a lot of information about us. Or go to the website for more information and then have your website be a place that they can click for a next step. Or, we're going to be here on Facebook this week on Tuesday night, just having a time for prayer. If you'd like to be that, those are all sort of general ways of encouraging people to take simple next steps without taking the deep dive on the very first thing. And then finally, I think in a general sort of sense, there's some places that online, like we have to look into the camera and there's a sort of a death stare, like right into the screen the whole entire time. It feels very unnatural, obviously, if somebody is just, and so again, like at a party or in a conversation, you're kind of into the, looking people in the eyes and then you're acknowledging that you're in a room and it's just trying to be as natural as possible. Those are all sort of obviously big general, statements of doing, and it kind of gets a bit more specific depending on each person's context. But those are real simple things. General asks for next steps as opposed to very specific ones are good ways of doing that. Trying to be natural on the camera is another way of not being creepy. Maria, you do this weekly and you do such an incredible job at it. What are your top tips for not being creepy?
I love that question. I don't think it's creepy at a church when someone's new and they come in the lobby And instead of waiting at the information booth or at the check-in table for them to come and introduce themselves, I always try to train our guest services people to go, right, go find the new people, introduce yourself,
Yep.
say, hey, and you can do that online. I don't personally think that is creepy. Online is a social media engagement tool. People are engaging with strangers all the time. Not my advice, because there's a lot of bad people out there. I get it. But I think if you've seen them pop up on your live stream and you've seen them click something or you see their name, going and saying, hey, I noticed you viewed our video. My name is Maria. I was so glad to see you there. If you have any questions or if you want to connect any further, I would love to let you know more about our church. Is there anything that I can pray for you about? That's not creepy at all. It could be creepy to some people, but I think that's worth it. If they see that as creepy, then to me, that's kind of, oh, well, at least you made that step. I think going that extra place where you're following up online is okay. I think there's a church called Forward Church in Irvine. One of our previous resources for the CSBC revitalization resources that we did, they just do ad buys for prayer. They spend a certain amount a month and they send out an ad, can we pray for you? And they've gotten a ton of responses. They've even gotten someone in early last year that came to the Lord and came to their church, is now part of their community. I've heard that happen repeatedly for churches who are putting that out there. I think that's a helpful, kind way to enter into someone's life. Just like a lot, my parents, they sit down at restaurants and they ask the waiter, the servers, can we pray for you? I think it's the same type of engagement. So I don't think that's creepy at all, but being direct in your communication instead of just, here's all the things we have available to you. This is a huge marketing concept. Be targeted in your approach with a clear call to action. Will always return way better, way more than here's what we have available. If you want to access it, here it is. Be clear in your approach and then a clear call to action.
Great. Hey, let's turn to the question about building a social media team, marketing team. Give us a couple of pointers.
Sure. First thing is there's got to be people in your community who are already engaged on social media. There are folks who are, Facebook fanatics, and they do a great job, and they're always on there, and they're commenting on other people's posts, and they're posting a ton. There are probably, young people, young families especially, that are engaged on Instagram. The goal is to find people who are already doing this and empower them to be able to serve the church in the same sort of way. It helps to have a conversation with them of saying, here's what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to let people know what life is like in our community on Instagram. So if you can capture some great pictures, do some great captions, turn them over to be able to do that. Team building is all about empowerment. So if you're not a Facebook power user, don't turn into a Facebook micromanager. If you're not an Instagram power user, don't turn into an Instagram micromanager. Just communicate really well what the hope and the goal is for those things. And then reward those teams well with gratitude, with pointing out their work. Be a person who follows your own page, thumbs up some of the posts that you see your team doing. Those are all small ways of showing, yes, you are on the right page. Like you're doing the things that we set out to do. And that goes much further than Starbucks gift cards, for people, even though Starbucks gift cards are still a great way to thank people. And then meeting regularly to be able to hear them report back, here's what's been happening online. So Instagram, Facebook, all of the tools, YouTube, especially, all have ways that every user is able to see a report of here's what happened this past month. This past month, X number of people saw our post, X number of people engaged with the post, X number of people, you had this many shares, likes, whatever. All of those numbers are good because it helps you to be able to make wise decisions going forward. You may see that you're building some momentum and, hey, let's put $100 towards targeting our specific community with some of our content. It's one of the ways that you can use these tools really well is by targeting your specific community. They have ways of finding where are people living, who are they engaging with, friends of friends, you can go onto their screens as well. It starts off with strategy, but I would find one person who is a step closer to being a power user on any of these tools than you are. Start off with them. Find people who are already following you or already a part of your community who are sort of power users on some of these tools, and engage them in an opportunity to be able to serve in a unique way.
Yeah, I think the key here is that, and this is such a great opportunity. We've never had this opportunity before to build teams to reach people for Christ in a new way that people are already using. I mean, everybody is on this thing, and we have an opportunity that we've never had before. And so I think, just like we used to, you have somebody who may be over small groups or Sunday school, or someone who's over children's ministry. It's a great opportunity to invite 2 or 3 people in to say, hey, why don't we start a brand new ministry with social media? We want to invest in you. We'd like for you to help us. And then you begin working with them, having regular meetings where you're getting feedback, getting ideas, implementing new thoughts. It's a great possibility for a church to expand their ministry. So let's see, any other questions that we have here? Maria, do you see any questions we need to be answering?
Yeah, there was one from Pastor Needleman. Can you address directive advertising versus creative, and how to turn Twitter and Instagram into creative at little to no cost? I'll answer it this way. There's some really interesting features introduced in the last couple of years to Instagram. One is called Reels. And Reels are quick, like video-based content that you can just record easily. Have someone use your phone or do a selfie video. There's actually no pressure, by the way. We are seeing the data come back that some of the most homemade type content on social media is working best on advertising, because everyone's so saturated with all the fancy marketing. So you don't have to feel like you have to have this amazing camera team and production team. Even though those look great and work great as well, you can still be effective on social media. But Reels on Instagram get a lot more traction than posts. And stories on Instagram get a lot more traction than posts. So instead of just posting on Instagram, this is like free. You don't have to pay any added things. Post a reel or engage in stories. When people view your story on Instagram or interact with your story in any way, the algorithm puts you up in the line in their stories. So next time they open their Instagram, your church's Instagram would have a higher place in their stories if they've seen it or engaged with it some way. So I would say that's a no-cost way to use Instagram creatively. Reels and stories, there's some really fun, engaging ways to do that. Again, we can get into the ins and outs of every single platform. But if you're trying to reach, those millennials, people who love Instagram, that would be a place to reach them. But not a lot of boomers, not a lot of Gen Zers, the high school and college age are on Instagram as much as they're on TikTok and Snapchat and all that. So I think remembering your strategy, who you want to meet. Hopefully that's helpful, Pastor Needham.
Yeah.
Yes, question? Can you hear me? Can I ask a quick question? Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. My major concern, I like the idea of Reels, is Instagram, Twitter, they are directive. In other words, you are going out specifically to your following. Creating the following is where I am questioning, is how do you create a following on Instagram or Twitter that has nothing to do with your little world?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a greet question. Without pouring millions of dollars into it, it's consistency. I think people see influencers or Instagram celebrities as like an overnight success. But if you ever investigate, they're typically tens of thousands of posts that they have made. For churches, it's a very similar sort of thing to be consistent. The other thing I think is to leverage your existing team, informing, hey, share this thing, even if it is internal communication, if it's, you know, in small meetings or with volunteers as a part of your email chain. We're going to be posting on Tuesday a thing about this. We'd love it if you would share it. Here's sort of a sneak peek of what the image is going to be. Facebook, Instagram, both reward shared information and what seems like something that is being passed among people. The algorithm rewards shares, likes, engagements, and so prepping your group of followers, even if they're small, to start sharing that feeds into the reward system of the algorithm for these platforms. So it does require leveraging your existing group. Finally, though, I think, and we've talked about this some, and it's the thing that you'll hear most from Legible, to be able to create a bridge of shared values between people who are looking at your organization from the outside in is a big, huge deal. How do you create the language that helps people to know exactly who you are, so that they can then self-select and go, I want to see more of these people who share my values, who I think better, reflect or communicate the gospel, the hope of the gospel, the simplicity of my own ability to be able to engage with the gospel. Those sorts of things, other than sharing just information from your post, sharing your hopes, your dreams, your values, all that sort of stuff is more shareable than we use Instagram to tell people about our women's ministry, or we use Instagram to invite people to an event, or we use Instagram to let people know, don't park in parking lot A this weekend, park in parking lot B. None of that is really shareable information. A lot of that is, it's information, which is good, but it's not necessarily where it lands.
There is a really good question. Could you be specific about some strategies for each of the main platforms, or do you have any good examples to point us to? And what do you think about email marketing? I'll answer the last question first. Email marketing, 100% necessary for every single church, no matter what size. And you can use a ton of platforms for this. MailChimp, Planning Center People, Church Community Builder, Fellowship One, any and everything for email is so important. But the one thing you should consider with email is not these like collections or bulletins of newsletter information, but it's segmented emails, targeted emails to the people who need that information with one call to action. For example, I'm a single adult. Most emails I get from all my church are about parenting classes, where I can drop my kids off, for my kids to sign up for camp, marriage classes, premarital counseling, family events, things like that, none of which are applicable to me directly as a person. So what we try to communicate with email marketing, segmenting, is to send emails to the audience that needs to hear this information, because your open rate will increase because they're going to start trusting that the emails are applicable to them. So think through targeted and and how many emails is too many? That's a good question too. I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think it's a personal preference. How many emails do you like getting from people that are marketing to you? But if it's a personalized email, it doesn't have to be this fancy designed email with your logo and all of that. It can be from a person who's doing the segmented, and you can send direct information with one call to action instead of, here's everything happening in the next month, and you have so many things to choose from. When they ask to be removed, you cross the line. Yeah, that's so good, Roger. I no longer want to receive these emails. Unsubscribe. But real quick, we have kind of a philosophy of each platform that we're talking about. YouTube is evergreen content for people to engage with the content, sermon series, things like that, and streaming. Facebook is great for event promotion. They have an event thing that you can set up where people can RSVP, get the information, they can share the event on their own platform, streaming services, and community engagement. Instagram, as Dex mentioned before, we think Instagram should be photography, videos, reels, stories, focusing on being kind of a window to the experience of your church culture. The platform's designed for that type of content. Instead of a bunch of graphic images, the graphic design images of your next event. Make sure there's people in the posts, there's videos, you're doing reels and stories on Instagram. Twitter are for quotes, and you can start conversations and threads and what do you think about this? Have you seen this? That kind of thing. Short, concise thoughts. So just a quick outline. And we could talk for an hour about Instagram, we could talk for an hour about Facebook, etc. But those are some good practices.
Well, we are coming to the end of our hour. And first of all, Dex and Maria, thank you guys so much. You have been so inspiring and helpful. And if this was encouraging to you today, and if this was helpful, you can reach Maria directly at maria@legible.org. It's in the notes. Or we'd love for you to right now go over to csbc.com/revitalization. We have 2 companion resources there on how to identify and engage new people online and how to count people online. That would be great for your team to look at. And so we have a number of other ones, not only in the past, but if you'll stay with us, we're going to be doing many coming up that I think are going to be helpful to you as we come out of COVID. As well as the bottom of our page, revitalization page, it says start your free assessment. And if you haven't done that, go to csbc.com/revitalization and hit that button for your free assessment. Listen, I firmly believe, Pastor, your best days are ahead of you. And so please go make a difference today. We're here to help you. Dex and Maria, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful time together. And as always, we're here to help you anytime you want to call us. God bless, and everyone have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.